numbers, $5.7 billion off of $4 trillion. It doesn't seem like a significant sum of money. So what's happening right now is this thing has become way more symbolic in terms of a fight between the Democrats and the Republicans, or Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer, Speaker of the House Pelosi, and President Trump. And so, I don't know where it's going, but I can tell you this. If the president was a private citizen and he was back at the Trump organization, he'd be looking at what's going on in Washington and be scratching his head and saying, geez, why can't these guys forge a compromise and figure a way out of this thing? You've got 800,000 workers locked up. You've got a sclerosis that will affect the economy. It's also affecting markets. And so it just seems like this is an ego grudge that they have to figure out a way to put aside.
Well, the Democrats are accusing him of having a presidential temper tantrum. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, in all of the time that I've seen the president, he's not prone to a quote-unquote temper tantrum. He obviously has these flare-ups on Twitter, and he's got these rhetorical flourishes that he uses on Twitter. But I've known the guy for 20 years. I have never seen him super angry. I mean, when he does get angry, it's usually very passive-aggressive. So I would be very surprised if he had a temper tantrum. He tried to... I think he called out Speaker Pelosi on Twitter this past week saying, that was nonsense. But I do know that he's known to walk out of a situation if he doesn't think he can get what he wants from a negotiating point of view. I think he once said, I think it was in the Art of the Deal, and I heard him repeat it on the campaign, if you're not ready to walk from a situation, you either want it too much and you've already lost the negotiation, or you're in a bad position vis-a-vis the other person. And so he's always been a position anchored to the idea. He's always been a person in a position anchored to the idea of walking. So I'm not surprised that he's where he is right now, but I just think it's really bad for the country. They have to get together, forge a compromise. Each side has to lose a little bit of face, and we got to get the government back open.
What do you think of all this discussion about declaring a national emergency? Would that be an abuse of power?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be an abuse of power, but I think it would be very bad precedent for the president, because what would stop a Democratic president, say, 4 or 8 years from now, saying, okay, we're going to ban all assault rifles in the United States because of a quote-unquote national emergency or a national crisis? What I think is unfair to the president, though, is that the Democrats have this talking point out there that the border crisis is manufactured. I think that's also unfair. You do have an issue on the border. You can talk to the border control agents. You can talk to guys in ICE, and they will tell you that we do have a problem. And then areas of the border where a fence and or wall has been put into place, you have seen a reduction of migration, and you've seen a reduction in drug trafficking. So the president's right on this. The Democrats used to be for this sort of stuff. President Obama was for this. He deported over 2 million people from the United States during the 8 years of his presidency. But what's happened now is that these guys obviously don't like each other, and they score talking points and they score fundraising from going against each other this hard. But it's having a deleterious effect now on the government. It's having a deleterious effect on the stock market. And at some point, this sort of behavior will switch economic psychology, and it'll cause an economic slowdown as well. So I hope these guys get it together shortly. This is the longest government shutdown, I think, in history now. And I think it's every second it goes by, it's a second too long.
When it comes to the president's tweets, he has sometimes tweeted things that are untrue. He's contradicted himself, like on who's going to pay for the wall. Describe for me the atmosphere in the White House when it comes to his Twitter feed and being his director of communications, trying to anticipate what's going to come out of there. What is his strategy?
Well, I never got overly concerned about the Twitter feed. We were on the campaign with him. The president, as a candidate, had this opinion that he needed Twitter to hop over the mainstream media to direct message to his supporters and to the 63 million people that have voted for him. So you're not going to change him on Twitter. What I did find during the campaign, and I was obviously in the White House for a very short period of time, but my observation of the president since he started this in June of 2015 is that when he feels well defended or he feels like there's a ton of advocacy out there on his behalf, he dials back what I would call the non-strategic tweeting. when he feels he's out there as a lone wolf or a lone operator and he's not getting the support or surrogacy in the media, he has a tendency to be a lot more aggressive on Twitter. But if you are his communications director today, like Bill Shine is, or somebody from the past, we would all say the same thing. You're not going to change his Twitter habits. He's 72 years old. He really believes that Twitter helped him win the presidency. And so what you need to do, though, is to fortify him better with more social and media advocates, which will cause him to dial some of that stuff back.
Mr. Scaramucci, you know the president well, as you pointed out. You worked in the White House. What is his opinion of Justin Trudeau, and what advice would you have for the government here to try to get those steel and aluminum tariffs removed?
Well, listen, I mean, I think he has a lot of respect for Prime Minister Trudeau. I know that they've had some rough conversations, and I mean, he's probably tweeted at the Prime Minister more than once, and certainly one more than necessary. But I think he does respect him. He respects him as the leader of Canada. And he also respects him for fighting and advocating on behalf of Canada. I think when you look at the New Deal, I guess we're calling it now the USMCA, I think Prime Minister Trudeau did a very good job, as well as Christian Freeland, in terms of protecting Canadian interests in that deal. At the end of the day, the president got a lot of things that he thought he needed for American manufacturing workers, but a lot of the industries that the Prime Minister wanted protected in Canada still have that protection. So I think the president likes him. And I think he expressed that in the signing ceremony with the president of Mexico and the Prime Minister. So I don't think it's anything personal there. They're just on opposite sides at times of a negotiation. As it relates to the steel tariffs, it's a separate issue.
Well, Mr. Scaramucci, that's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, good morning. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. For more